So I'd like to start by welcoming everyone and saying thank you so much for being here. This is our first 2025 summer series session. We hope the first of several that you'll join us for. We are going to be hosting a number of these sessions, some of them informational like today, and also designed to be really interactive with you. Also, some that are going to present you with some research and maybe some topics and issues in social justice areas that you may not have been aware of or interested in learning more about. So thank you again for taking some time to learn more about what is macro practice. We have some experts here with us today to show you, to talk with you exactly what is macro practice, share with you some information about careers, what the coursework looks like if you choose to pursue the MAP specialization here. So let me go ahead and get started introducing our expert presenters. First, we have Dr. Elsa Candelario, who is a professor of professional practice here at the school and also director of our LISTA certificate program, which stands for Latina Initiatives for Service Training and Assessment. We also have Dr. Lena Nepomuceni, who is a professor and also the faculty liaison for our MSW Masters in Public Policy Dual Degree Program, which is offered by our school through a partnership that we have with the highly ranked Blaustein School. Maybe some of you out there are in that program or perhaps thinking about applying. If you are, as a new student, thinking about applying, please talk to us very soon over here in admissions, and we'll be happy to give you some more information about that. We also have Dr. Karun Singh, who is our professor of teaching at the School of Social Work. And last but certainly not least, Paula Benitez, who is our current MSW student joining us today, and she is in our management and policy specialization. So our program today is, as I said, informational. Dr. Candelario is going to present you with a lot of great information about the specialization, about what is macro practice, what does that look like in social work. And then we're also going to have plenty of time for some guided questions. And also what we'd like to do towards the end is really turn the session over to all of you attending and entertain your questions and field whatever thoughts you're having about macro practice or perhaps MAP. And I'll just note that I know we have both current students here, as well as some new incoming summer and fall students. So welcome to all of you. And I will go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Candelario.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Dr. Elsa Candelario, and I'm here to speak with you about the MAP specialization, which takes the practice of social work to the next level. It's a great way to prepare you for a career in which you're impacting organizations, communities, and policy. So this definition comes from the accrediting body for social work education. And here you'll find that the definition includes an agency or organizational focus of administration first, administration and management or leadership. Second, a community focus, community practice that focuses on a neighborhood or on an issue or on a specific population. And then finally, a policy practice focus, which, as to be redundant, focuses on the public policy environment. So just to highlight how this might play out in the real world, in my former work as an agency administrator, I can tell you that my macro practice involved all three of these domains. So the management of organizations and programs, working with boards, working with staff, working with grant and fundraising. And second, the community practice involved community advocacy, community organizing, And finally, on the policy level or policy practice, for a human services administrator, analyzing public policy is very important for how it impacts your organization, your services, and your populations. But then also I, in practice, actually provide a testimony in support of public policy that would advance conditions in our neighborhoods. So at Rutgers, our MSW students have to select from one of two areas of specialization. That would be clinical social work or management and policy, which we affectionately call MAP. And so this decision is made kind of early on if you're in the traditional program. So for example, in the fall of your first year, you would be thinking about what excites you as an incoming student, what you'd like to do. And so for a MAP student, rather than counseling people one-on-one, in this specialization, you're going to be working with greater numbers of people through program and organizational leadership, policy analysis, and or community organizing. And MAP graduates have many skills and abilities that enhance the well-being and promote social justice, enhance the well-being of populations and communities, and promote social justice for populations. And so in year two, you begin your specialization, and that means that your practicum will be a MAP-oriented practicum. Also, your advanced practice courses are not clinical. They will be macro. So each semester that you have practicum placement, you'll have an accompanying social work practice course. And the first semester of year two, that course for you would be called Management Practice and Theory. And in the spring of year two, that course would be called Program and Strategic Planning. And in management practice and theory, you're going to learn, you're going to get a very broad overview of just that management practice and theory over the course of 15 weeks. So the MSW curriculum also allows you to select 4 electives if you're in the traditional program. And so for the MAP specialization, we have 4 electives that might be of interest to you. They're fundraising and marketing, human resource management, supervision and consultation, community organization, financial management. That might have been a bit more than 4. And in addition, we have many advanced policy electives from which you might choose. You can take those out of our MSW program, but you can also consider electives in other schools throughout Rutgers. And so you should know also that our school offers MAP chats, which are events that occur twice a semester, and they bring students together with macro practitioners for a better understanding of life in the world of MAP practice. So, for example, we had topics such as nonprofit startups or on how to prepare for MAP jobs, etc. And so these are opportunities to create a community of MAP students, but also to learn more specifically about MAP jobs and to focus on networking opportunities that might prepare you for careers as a macro practitioner. So a lot of students have questions about practicum roles. This is not all inclusive, but in our MAP specialization, you're going to have 900 hours of practicum over the course of a year. And this is a key part of the social work pedagogy. And you can imagine that a great deal of learning occurs in practicum. So here you can see that the types of roles that you might have include advocacy, community organizing, working on special projects with executive directors, perhaps on grant writing, auditing, fundraising, policy research, policy evaluation, program development, program evaluation, etc. And so these are the kinds of tasks that you might encounter in a MAP-oriented practicum. And it's important to note that these skills are transferable macro social work skills. They're transferable to the real world once you are a graduate of our School of Social Work. And the practicum specialist for MAP students, her name is Marianne Bischoff. And so if you have already enrolled and you are looking at practicum placements, you likely have heard from Marianne. We have a partnership with the Network for Social Work Management, and Dr. Karun Singh is the chairperson for New Jersey and New York. The Network for Social Work Management offers a Human Services Management Certificate. It's a valuable certificate for our MAP students. And so by virtue of being at Rutgers in the MAP curriculum, our curriculum actually meets 75% of the competencies listed here, which you can also check out on the Network for Social Work Management's website. And by virtue of meeting 75% of the competencies, our students are eligible for that certificate, the Human Services Management Certificate. So once you're approaching graduation, you would hear from our Student Affairs Office, and they would offer you the opportunity to secure the certificate with a small fee of whatever that fee is, maybe $20 or $25. And you can list that on your resume. And so you can look at their website to get more guidance on what those competencies are about. They're important competencies. These domains are domains that are agreed upon as important for a MAP student, macro practitioner, and they include executive leadership, of course, resource management, strategic management, and community collaboration. And so they give you a good sense of what a macro practitioner does, because it also dovetails with my description earlier of the Council on Social Work Education's a definition of macro practice. So a lot of our students have questions. What kind of jobs can I get if I specialize in MAP? And these are job titles that might be appropriate for a MAP that you might look for as a MAP graduate. So you probably won't see social worker per se, but you might see job announcements for program coordinators or policy analyst, quality improvement specialist or quality improvement coordinator, grant writer, community liaison, fundraiser, advocate, community organizer, marketing specialist, or data analyst, and there are many others. So this is not an all-inclusive title, but it gives you a sense of the kinds of jobs that one would be looking for as a MAP graduate.
Yeah. Oh, đúng rồi.
And
Hello.
so through MAP, you'll learn important skills like how to fundraise and budget, how to create and lead programs, how to exercise sound human resource practices, how to advocate, how to research and analyze policy, and many, many other skills. And as a MAP graduate, we believe that we prepare you for practice that has a broader impact on larger groups of people, like communities, organizations, and systems. So if you think about macro practice, it's not working one-on-one with an individual client or one-on-one with a family. Rather, you're working with communities, organizations, and systems. And so I will turn it back. I'm going to stop my share and I will turn it back over to Dr. Laura DeMarcantonio.
Thank you so much. Very helpful and lots of questions coming in already. So thank you. I should have said that at the beginning. We are going to turn it over to you and ask you to unmute and ask questions towards the end. But in the meantime, please keep the immediate questions coming, and we'll either pop a response into the chat or maybe even hold it for a bigger conversation in just a little bit. But what I'd like to do now is ask our presenters to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about their background, why they're here talking about MAP today, and some other experiences perhaps that they've had in this area of social work. So if you wouldn't mind, Dr. Napamanyeshi, would you like to start first?
Sure, thank you. Thanks, Laura, for having us here, and it's so great to see all you here. Elsa, that was such a fantastic presentation. It's just so hard to say anything after Elsa does that, so whatever I say is just dumb. My name is Lena Napomnishi. I have a very long last name, but please just call me Lena. I am a professor here. I actually got my MSW right where you all are many, many years ago. And I was in what was called, it was the macro track then, but it was called something else. It was called planning, policy, community organizing, I think, or something that I don't remember. And I actually finished, and so I wanted to do something not necessarily one-on-one kind of work, but I wanted to do something with working with people. And I went into a school, and I was a school social worker, but not in kind of the more clinical way that we think about it, but in a much more macro way, because we started a brand new program, an alternative high school program, and I was basically running the program on the ground, starting from scratch. And that was this mix, right? Which I think I want to really bring home, right? Social work is everything, right? It is very rare in a macro kind of position to never have any contact with people. Of course, you're going to have contact with people, with individuals, right? Because they are all in the spaces where we are, whether we're in an organization, a community organization, whether we are in a research think tank, we are still constantly connecting with people. That's what makes us different, right, than every other profession. Economists, public policy people, they often are sitting in their space doing their thing, but they do not have the on-the-ground connections that social workers have. So I want to make that remembering why it's so important for us to be in this space. One thing I just want to say, and okay, sorry, let me back about me. I was a social worker in a school for 10 years, and then I decided I really wanted to do research, so I got a PhD. And then here I am as a faculty here, and my research is around poverty and inequality and social policies and how they affect families and children, particularly children in lower income families. I'm very concerned about the levels of inequality in this country and how we have not taken care of the most vulnerable here, and we continue to not do that. So that's kind of my big area of research. I think I'll stop there. I have other stuff to say, but actually, let me say one other thing, I'll stop. In the way Elsa presented macro practice, which was beautifully put, right? It's thinking about focusing on working in organizations, working at the community level, working at the policy level. But I do want to just shout out, right? In all of these ways that we're working, we are working to impact people, right? We are working to improve the well-being of individuals, families, communities, across all of these different settings. We're just doing it in a slightly different way. So I'll stop there.
Pass it over to Dr. Singh. Thank you, Lena.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Rutgers, and congratulations on being accepted. So I just wanted to say I love MAP. I started out originally many moons ago thinking I'd be a clinical social worker. And, that's not surprising because 95% of social work grads in the US specialize in clinical. But after a year of clinical, I decided it wasn't for me. And I went into the macro practice area, and I really loved it. And I've been with it ever since. So I basically have been at Rutgers since 2011. So for the past 14 years, and I love being here. It's a great place. I was previously at another public school of social work. That was at Hunter College in New York City, and that's where I live. So I got my master's and PhD from Columbia in New York City, and yeah, it's a great life. I love meeting with students. I used to formerly be in advising as well. So I have a great exposure to all the kinds of issues that students are facing and everything, all sorts of issues and questions related to the specialization, licensing, etc. My area of research interest is in strategic planning for nonprofit organizations. Um, and I'm actually co-chair of the two of these chapters of the Network for Social Work Management, as Professor Candelario mentioned, the New York City and the New Jersey chapters of the network. And we hold events in both spring and fall semesters. We just had one on Monday on social work careers. And I can send the PowerPoint to anyone who's interested. The courses I teach, there's one initial one in the foundation year called Diversity and Oppression, and then the rest are MAP courses. So management practice and theory, program development and strategic planning, fundraising and marketing, and supervision and consultation. So I'm going to stop with that. I'll send up my bio to the chat. Before I do that, I wanted to mention the Human Services Management Certificate. Generally, students in other schools have to pay a fee, but we negotiated with our dean to pick up the cost. So actually, that certificate is free for all of our
Oh, good.
MAP certificates. It's only for you have to be a master's student, specialize in MAP, and as long as you graduate, you'll get that certificate. And I was actually emailed 53. I don't know why Dean Hunter copied me, but I got 53 of these emails about the certificate. So I'm really happy for our students. And I'll stop with that because there's yet another certificate I want to talk about, but I'll wait for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Singh. Dr. Candelaria, would you like to say a few more words? I know you.
Sure. Yeah, I jumped into the presentation. So I've been, I'm Dr. Elsa Candelario. I was a nonprofit director for 25 years after graduating from Columbia with my MSW in something somewhat in the middle of clinical and it was called practice programming and supervision at the time, which was practice, programming, and supervision. A lot of grant writing was part of our curriculum. And so I went into the field and kind of almost immediately, worked as a case manager and immediately was promoted to program director and then became executive director at an agency in Camden where I was for more than 20 years. And during that time, I was teaching part-time for Rutgers, one course a semester since 2007. So I've taught many, many courses in the MAP specialization and now in the LISA certificate program, which focuses on social work practice with Latinos. And in 2020, I say I retired from nonprofit management. After almost 25 years, it felt like a good transition to come to academia. And I've since secured my doctorate in social work practice, which is a practice doctorate, and have been enjoying building courses for students and using my fundraising and grant writing skills to bring resources to Rutgers School of Social Work to benefit social work students. And so this year, for example, we had 18 $10,000 scholarships for LISA students and another 25 $10,000 scholarships and $4,000 stipends for students who were bilingual and are matched in practicums in the adult behavioral health system, which is, as you might imagine, they don't have enough bilingual social workers. And finally, we had 7 bilingual scholarships for students working with unaccompanied minors. And so again, my macro practice skills are being used in a new setting. So they're very transferable skills, right? If you know how to write grants, and you know how to analyze policy, and you know how to read reports that impact our profession, you could have a good understanding for building a case for these kinds of initiatives. So they're new initiatives. I'm very proud of them. Paula is one of the students who is in LISTA and also has worked with unaccompanied minors, which is, as you might imagine, a very hotbed kind of area at this time. So that's who I am, and I really look forward to meeting you all on your social work education journey. Thanks, Laura.
Thank you, Dr. Candelario. That was a good introduction to for Paula. If you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about your experiences in MAP and in the MSW. I do know most of the attendees here today are incoming new students, so I'm sure they'll be excited to hear from you.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. I actually remember being in your shoes last year, and I was just like, what am I going to do? What am I going to choose? But to tell a little bit more about my story and how I got to Rutgers, I always like to say that Rutgers chose me and it was an aligned path. So I came here as an unaccompanied migrant child. I was undocumented when I was 18 years old, and so I started at a community college. Fun fact that most of my professors don't know about. I was actually going to drop out my first semester. I couldn't pay, so I went to the advisor's office, and she asked me, she's like, there's no way that you can drop out. She chose me the dual program at Rutgers and told me that it was something that was possible for me to do. From that day forward, I remember just putting my mind, I have to get into Rutgers, I have to get into Rutgers. During my internship at my last year at community college, I got hired as a paralegal, where I was an paralegal for a year, and I worked with unaccompanied migrant child in court. So I saw a lot of social work deficiencies in those programs, especially in the court systems. So I chose to come back to Rutgers and do my BSW at Newark. When I was there, I was able to actually get my green card, and I was doing a study abroad program to Belize, which introduced my love for international social work. And I wasn't sure what route I was going to take. So during one of these information sessions, I saw the LISA certificate program, and I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to pay for a master's program. So I had to figure it out. And given those scholarships and those stipends was the way. And I applied for it. I got in. And now I'm in my master's program. I was put into Make the Road New Jersey, which is an agency that works directly with unaccompanied migrant children, immigrant, and working class. They do community organizing, social services, legal services, and I was able to work in all arenas of those places. So I was able to go to Washington Advocacy Day. I was also able to run support groups at 3 community centers. I was also able to work closely with the legal team and working with unaccompanied migrant children that were also in the system, trying to figure out resources, not just for them, but also for their families. I was able to work with asylum clinics and do a study abroad program. So it very much aligns with my passion. I want to change social and immigration policy, but a lot more what I've learned from my organization is the power of community organizing and the power of community and being an advocate and always standing out. So I say this to those that are in the line between clinical and MAP. I was the only MAP student in the study abroad program. And it usually happens that way for any sessions that we go to. But a lot of the clinical students were starting to see, especially what's happening in our country, right? And what's happening in democracy in our systems, the value of social workers. And we're light workers. We're in so many spaces in schools and medical, but we need more policy and we need more research and more policy focused. So that's the reason I chose. And right now I'm actually going to study for my LSAT program and combine international social work with international law.
Oh, thank you so much. That was incredibly inspiring. And what I mean, and what a great plug as well for seeking out advice, right? When you need help, and you're not sure what the next step is, and also taking advantage of all the resources here, and just different experiences. So congratulations to you. That's awesome. Um, So we have reached the point in our session where we're going to we have some questions which we typically get in these chats that I've been in. So I thought I would throw those out first, but we welcome any questions that you have. I'll say if you're sitting there with questions right away, if you want to raise your hand, that might be the best way, and then we'll just ask you to unmute. And I'll also ask our expert presenters here, feel free to jump in on any of these questions. So we've talked a little bit about specific jobs and careers that are available in macro social work. Are there any that you feel really need social workers right now or are highly in demand? We started with a tough one.
I think I was focused on the chat. I'm sorry, Laura.
No, that's okay. Any macro, I mean, we know that there are a lot of opportunities out there for careers and jobs in macro practice. Are there any in particular that you can think of, or that perhaps we've been getting practicums, agencies wanting to work with our students because there is a great need for social workers in those areas of macro practice?
So were you gonna?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I mean, I don't have, obviously, I don't know everything that's going on out there, but I have a sense that I'm in the policy space, so I have much more connections and understanding of where policy focused students are being are finding work. And I think so one area that actually one of our students kind of began in, and then she connected with a whole organization of people doing this work is library social work, which is relatively new. And, I think we don't think about that, right? But libraries are kind of the place, the only place in our country where people can go and sit for free, right? And without having to buy anything, you're allowed to be in that space. Okay, first. Second of all, libraries provide all sorts of amazing opportunities, classes, computers, right? People with knowledge who will sit there with you and help you. So having a social worker there seems like exactly where we should be. And so she was able to start like she did a bunch of community advocacy, a bunch of community organizing, connecting people to whatever services they needed in a more kind of micro space, right? But then in a much more kind of making larger contributions to the community. And there's a National Association of Social Work Librarians actually also that she was able to connect with and actually start, I think, a chapter in New Jersey. So there is really cool work out there. That's one thing. And then also more kind of policy focused. Every organization that does policy advocacy, policy research, they want social workers because again, we can get economists who usually take those kinds of jobs, sometimes lawyers, sure, and often public policy people. They do not have the on the ground experience with actual human beings. Many of those people literally have never spoken to a human. I mean, I'm obviously lying, but a person who is in need, right? A person who is actually experiencing the problems, some of the social problems in our country, and who are the recipients of some of the social welfare programs, right, that we are thinking about. So there is it's very valuable to have a social work degree in those spaces, and they want social work trained people.
I'll add that just human services generally, human service organizations generally need leaders for every program, every department. And so I think leadership is a very big area of need. In fact, I'm on the New Jersey Mental Health Institute's board, which is part of the New Jersey Association of the Mental Health and Addictions Agencies. And those behavioral health organizations are really clamoring for social work leaders, and to the point where they've actually developed a mentoring program to kind of raise up the next generation of leaders because of the plethora of leaders who are actually retiring. And so social work leadership generally is something that is needed in the human services space. And just think of how broad that is, right? I just mentioned behavioral health, but that could be, so many other systems, behavioral health, the adult education space, prevention services, child welfare services, and the whole spectrum of child welfare services, et cetera. All of those spaces are looking for leaders, coordinators, managers, people. The more skills you have in the macro space, you're going to use them. Grant writing, organizing, policy analysis, all of those skills are very appealing to human services organizations because they don't have the luxury of just having one policy analyst. Many times in the organizations in which I've worked, they're really relying on their coordinators and managers to be subject experts, so to speak, and to understand the regulations in their spaces. And if there's a change in regulations, to understand how an organization has to pivot or respond or advocate or organize. So all of those keywords that we use in the field are actually taught in our curriculum.
I would also add, I actually just went to Social Work Day at the United Nations, and I was able to network and mentor and find a mentor that's actually working in Washington, giving therapy to the workers at the World Bank, I believe. And there's also spaces where in global social work classes where we build interventions for certain countries. And if we're able to find agencies in those countries, you can also do international social work, which is a space that a lot of people don't look into, but it's very interesting. And when we were at the United Nations, there's a shortage of social workers there. So they are asking for more MAP, especially in policy and advocacy with immigration as well.
I'd like to just jump in and say that quite a few of our grads, they've got positions where they're required to do program planning. So that's extremely important. And then assist with fundraising. Because as you know, with the shrinking funding pie, you need someone who's good at writing grants and knowing how to do special events. And that goes along with marketing. So see this mug I hold up, I use it at every Zoom class. So what I'm doing is consciously planting in your head, so it seeps into your unconscious that you're going to graduate and get this lovely mug as well. So there's hope out there. So yeah, fundraising, marketing, and the program planning, it goes along as well with the needs assessment and policy analysis. All of those skills are the critical skills that they're looking for. And social workers are actually extremely good at those skills.
Thank you so much. I've seen a number of questions in the chat, just related to kind of having an interest in both MAP and clinical. And how can how does that work with your practicum specialization? I don't know if Paola, if you want to share anything else about how that, I mean, I can describe the nuts and bolts of kind of how the practicum placement works, but how did that evolve for you in terms of maybe you came in knowing you wanted MAP, or maybe your generalist placement helped you? I think it'd be helpful to hear from you.
Yes, so I definitely came in wanting to know that I wanted to do the MAP specialization, and my focus with Rutgers is most of the social justice focus that we have in this program. When I did my agency, I described it more of four components, which is community organizing, policy innovation. When I was there, the route and the experience that you have in the program also depends on how much you put into it, right? And how you advocate for yourself in these spaces, because a lot of the times you're going to be an intern in the practicum, and I didn't get a lot of work and I was starting to work from home. So I advocated, I said, hey, I went to talk to the executive director. When I talked to the executive director, I told them my goal and that experience. And so after speaking with that is when I was able to go to Washington Advocacy Day, when I was able to work more closely with the legal team. And that certified for me that I could put social work and law together. And so that's the way that I put my MAT specialization. But a lot of the practicum, and I will say you have to do a lot of more advocating when you're in those spaces. They don't choose. So for me in undergrad, we had to go and choose our practicum. And that's the way that I got my undergrad. But for here, they were placed with it. And I advocated for myself because I really needed a scholarship and the stipend. And so Ms. Candelario knows I was sending emails, making sure that I was put in an organization that offered those. And it was kind of a perfect place for me. I worked with unaccompanied migrant children, got the scholarship, got the stipend, but got the real life experience of working with immigrants and also working in administration with executive directors as well.
Great, thank you so much. I don't know if any of our other presenters want to add anything in terms of if we're still not sure whether I should be doing clinical or MAP. I mean, we did have, I know we've got some advanced standing students here. You've probably already made your decision. We asked you to tell us what you wanted to specialize on your application. That can still be changed. I want to say that right now. You haven't started classes yet. If you're starting this summer, you've registered, I know, but you do still have time to change. And for those of you that are in 2, 3, and 4-year programs, you have some additional time, and there's going to be more conversations like that. But any advice from our presenters on how to choose?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm going to completely answer this, but I want to say, Paula mentioned that she was the only MAP student on the study abroad that I was the lead on. The other 7 students were not, they were clinical. However, I can say that those 7 students throughout the study abroad kept questioning their choice because they felt so excited by understanding systems, and they kept hearing from social workers in this case, we were in Puerto Rico, from social workers in Puerto Rico about the systems and how systems were impacting services. And they talked about how they were advocating, doing systems advocacy, and they understood laws, and they understood, and these were, a range of social workers from direct practice to leaders of programs. And so our students were really inspired to know more about systems and about macro practice. And usually it's clinical students aren't always, you'll hear a lot like, oh, you need the license, you need the license, you need the license. A lot of our clinical students are not getting their license. I mean, we do encourage everyone to get a clinical license if that's what they want to do. But it's, you need an LSW to practice social work, right? And you can get that after your MSW is over. So you really need to think about, do you want to work one-on-one with people? Like, is that what excites you? Do you want to do one-on-one therapy counseling or family counseling or, some other modality, even group counseling? Is that what really excites you? Or are you excited by thinking more about systems and working on systems? And it sounds kind of vague and amorphous, but it really isn't that vague or amorphous when you kind of learn the skills that accompany the work. So when we say systems, what does that mean? That's going to transfer into specific skills and competencies that will allow you to work in those spaces around systems. And so I just wanted to say that it was throughout our 10 days in Puerto Rico, our students were and all of their papers were about systems. I can say that. None of them were about one-on-one clinical practice or gaps in clinical practice. All of their papers were about systems. So I'm not sure if that answered the question directly, but I just wanted this group to be aware of our experience in Puerto Rico and how not only the Puerto Rican social workers, but also Paula's perspective on systems inspired them to think about macro practice.
I will add a little bit on that because I'm all for changing systems that oppress us and discriminate us, specifically just with my own population. But I think a lot of people also experience that, especially given the times that we are living in and the white elephant in the room, that a lot of social work programs are being attacked, a lot of internships are being attacked. But there are voices and there are agencies that help with that. But as we were talking with the students, in the study abroad program, one of the things and analogies that really stood out to me is that she felt like there was in social work, or the world that we go into is flooding. And so when with clinical, she just feels like she has a bucket and she's just throwing out the water. But when you're in MAP, you're closing the faucet so it doesn't keep leaking and flooding anymore. And so that perspective to me, I was just like, yes, that's why I chose MAP. That's why I choose law, because sometimes I feel like we can uphold those same systems that we talk about. And when you are going into MAP, you are being a person, a seat at the table, right? So for example, if they're talking about AI policy, instead of other people choosing that policy for us, we will be social workers in that space, in those rooms, telling them and advocating for our positions, because we're in a world that's changing very rapidly. And we are so multifaceted with all of the skills that we have, with the advocacy that we have, with the history that we learn in classes, that we're a light in those spaces that a lot of people aren't.
That was a really beautiful analogy, Paula, the buckets and the faucets. I just want to say back to my own experience, I was a social worker in a school, and that was what I felt the most, is that, it was such a rewarding thing. I loved working with adolescents. It was spectacular. But I worked there for 10 years, right? Every year it was the same issues, right? The same problems continued over and over again. And sure, it was incredibly wonderful to work with these kids and help get them through school, get them diplomas, etc. But the problems never changed, right? And so at that point, I felt like I really needed to be doing something at a more kind of policy level, because that is exactly the kind of issues that you're talking about. And there was also, just going off topic for a second, actually, no, let me stay on topic. I think one of the, about choosing, I think you have to go with what you want, with what it's in your gut, right? I think a lot of people are like, well, I think I'm interested in these big issues, but what does that look like? I think it's much more hard. It's much more abstract a little bit to think about what a macro practices than what micro practices, because we can all imagine, right, talking one-on-one with individuals. And so people are like, well, I'm just gonna do clinical because I think that's what social work is, right? And that's not true. You should do what gives you passion and what you really want to work on. And right, if you're interested in kind of these bigger issues and working in more macro spaces, then that is what you should be doing. And if not, then you should be doing something else. And there are jobs everywhere. And social workers are appreciated in every space. I also want to say there was a question in the chat about legislative internships, and absolutely we have people who are working in the New Jersey state legislature. There's the actual legislature takes on interns, and also jobs. And then you can also work and intern with specific legislators. And we have had people working at the federal level with state level, like New Jersey representatives, or actually a Delaware representative. So there are all sorts of political opportunities. I just put a link in the chat about social work on the Hill, Capitol Hill Day. That's sponsored by the Congressional Institute for Research on Social Work and Policy. I'm getting the name wrong. It's called CRISP. And that is run by a social worker who is on the Hill. And he also takes on interns for that organization to get, again, social workers more connected with kind of political issues. And we have Marla Blunt Carter, who's on our faculty, who is very much in the political space. Her sister is now the senator from Delaware, actually, Lisa Blunt Rochester, and she teaches political social work and is very much in that political space.
Thank you so much. I think we've covered everything in the chat. So I think maybe we could, if there's anything else I'm missing, please feel free to raise your hand and we'll call on you to unmute. Dr. Singh, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I was going to say that you should start out right now with your passion for what you want to do. But basically, I view this MAP and clinical as two different sides of the same coin, just like you have a heads and tails. So you could start out being clinical, and remember, you have to be responsible for your own continuing education. So you could be working, for example, in a full-time as a clinician in a social service agency once you graduate, and then you you get promoted to a supervisor. So our alumni data show that, as I said, most of our students are clinical, but they get promoted very quickly within 2-3 years to supervisory positions. So already you're doing a bit of MAP then, right? And then you get engaged in program planning and the fundraising, et cetera, et cetera. So you could be doing that. If you're a MAP specialist, you get out. You could always, if you want, you work full-time as a, say, a program planner at an agency. If you're interested in doing some clinical work, you can always work on weekends or the evenings, for a part-time private practice. And you could be under the supervision of what's called an LCSW, licensed clinical social worker. I think Dr. Demarcon, I'm going to call you Dr. Laura, had mentioned in the chat that you um, can actually, what is that? All right, I'm going to get back to it. But basically, you can take enough courses. You work with your advisor, and you can take enough courses with clinical content through your electives. You have general electives. So it is possible to take those and then come back years later and get your clinical license if you want to. Or we have a special, it's like a special dispensation from the Pope. But for grads, MAP grads who didn't take enough clinical content, you actually can come back, and if you're missing a course, and usually it's only one course you're missing, you can take an advanced clinical practice course to satisfy your requirement for the clinical license. And we don't have many. I mean, I can count them on our fingers, but recently we've had 3 or 4 of my MAP grads who've gone and to obtain the clinical license. And so you can do a lot of different things with your degree. That's what I love about social work. So when you're starting out, start out with what feels passionate for you. You can always change later on and do the other kind of work.
Thank you for mentioning that, Dr. Singh. That is actually a benefit that we offer exclusively to Rutgers graduates, to be able to come back and take MSW reserved courses. If you are but seeing that you haven't completed all the clinical hours that you need for that LCSW. And as I mentioned in the chat, I mean, you also may be looking at other states. Other states have different requirements. New Jersey, I believe, is it's 4 courses or 12 hours of clinical work, clinical practice. So again, working closely with your advisor, you can still do that as a MAP student. Let's see. I see some additional questions.
There was a question, Laura, that I tried to answer, but I don't know if I was
Dr.
right.
Napamanyashi, would you like to share a little bit more about the MSW MPP program, the Masters in Public Policy?
Yeah. And also I answered one of the questions, but I'm not sure if I did it completely right. So maybe we can check back in. Am I frozen? Am I working? No, I'm working as a person. Okay. Yes, the MSW MPP program. Normally, the way it's run, you come in to the MSW program, you have a year of MSW classes and your first year practicum. Then you switch to the Blaustein School for your second year and you take their classes and you take because they also have an internship. And then the third year, you come back to us and do your second year practicum and finish your MSW courses. So it's social work, Blaustein social work. The question in the chat from Rachel was about advanced standing and what happens with those students. And I'm not completely certain. I feel like that can still happen. It might take a little bit of playing around, but go ahead, Laura.
No, we don't actually have an approved curriculum for advanced standing students. So, but the good news is, I mean, the whole, bonus, one of the big bonuses of this dual degree program is it takes what would be 4 years to get both of those degrees, and you earn it in 3 years. As an advanced standing student, you can already earn both of these degrees in 3 years. So we don't have, you wouldn't be doing it in the dual degree curriculum, But let's say you're already starting your advanced standing program, you're going to complete it in 1 year. You can then apply, and more than likely you're doing well in your MSW, get admitted to the MPP program, and then it's another 2 years. You will get, if you choose to accept, they will offer you some transfer credit courses. So it's not a dual degree curriculum specifically, but still the same time frame.
Thanks, Laura. Thank you. And I don't know what else about that program. These programs go very, very hand in hand, because many of the things that you're learning with us, then you do in kind of a more intense way with them. They have, again, an internship where you can really get into kind of the policy work more intensely. I also want to say we have other dual degree programs, right? We have a law dual degree program, we have a criminal justice school dual degree program, and MAP students are very much eligible for all of those. And MAP students are also eligible for all of the certificate programs. I want to make sure you would know that, except for the addictive behaviors one, which is just very specialized.
That's a great point. Thank you so much. We did have a hand up. Did we answer your question, Julian?
Hey, thank you. I started to talk about it. If I could ask it, please. Thank you, everyone, for presenting. Thank you, everyone, for sharing so generously. I wanted to know, and maybe Paula, as much as you want to chime in towards this, about the JD MSW dual program. That already seems just so, like, both curriculums are asking so much of a person. And then on top of that, funding that JD seems such a heavy thing to accomplish. I just wonder if that's commonly pursued. Like, do you see just 1 or 2 students pursue that every year? Or Paula, it sounds like you're taking a pause so that you can study to be admitted to the law program. Yeah, if anyone can comment towards that, please.
For me, so I was looking towards the dual program. And you have to get into the law school first. So your junior year, you have to apply to the law school first, and then they'll mesh the law school program. I have 2 friends that we're actually in classes now. They're doing that program, and they love it. Most of it, she got scholarships from the law school. Rutgers Law School is actually very generous with a lot of the scholarships that they give, especially also with the social work program. They send you out applications. So I know that that's how they paid for most of it, and then they did have to take out loans. Just being completely transparent. For me, I want to do international social work, so I wanted to take a time to go to study a little bit more for my LSAT, and make sure that I kind of wanted to try other law schools outside of Rutgers. I will still be applying to Rutgers Law School, but I'm looking at NYU. They're just a little bit more focused on international law, which is why I like it. So I think that's what I can say so far, and I know that they loved it. It'll be like the 4 years, so you'll start off law school, then you'll do social work the second year, then it's a combination of both, and then the last year you finish with both law school and social work as well.
Laura, can I answer a question that was asked to me privately that I think matters actually for everyone? This was a question about whether our school offers research assistantships that are outside of your internship, outside of your practicum. And yes, absolutely. I think we're one of the only MSW programs where there is dedicated funding from the dean for every faculty member to put in a request for a research assistantship. And it's 6 hours a week. And I don't remember what the pay is. I want to say 18 to 20 in that space. I can't remember right now per hour. And you can work with a faculty person on whatever project they're working on. So I actually hire a person to run the policy network, which I'm going to put into the chat. It is a weekly newsletter that the student who I hire puts out. And it covers kind of whatever interesting policy things are happening, policy jobs, policy internships, action items, opportunities for advocacy, and so on. And then lots of people have lots of other opportunities. And again, these are very, they're focused across different kinds of areas, right? Certainly clinical students absolutely apply for those as well. But this is really often, it is about policy, about research, about kind of working at the community level. So look out for that. That will come at the beginning of the year from the dean's office. I'm putting in the chat.
Yeah, so I was actually a research assistant for Miss Candelario for the Lisa certificate program this year. So just for Jasenia, that was my biggest concern because I'm a first generation student and I pay for everything myself. So I don't have, and I was like, I have to figure this out, but I know that I wanted to go to the master's program. So definitely I got scholarships from the Lisa certificate. I got the stipend from the Lisa certificate. I was also the research assistant for the Lisa certificate. And I applied for scholarships outside of the school and also within the school, and that helped me cover a lot and most of my tuition. And I know I did have to take out some loans, which I didn't want to, but you know, if you want to get somewhere, you have to make those sacrifices. I did take those out. But there is a program in the state of New Jersey that if you work in an agency for a year, I don't know how that's going to change now with the administration, but it's up to $150,000 of those loans will be erased off, which made me feel safe to take out those scholarships. And I will say, I have had to, just to talk from a student perspective, advanced standing does seem like it's very rigorous, but I promise it goes by very, very fast. You don't even feel it. It's 3 classes in the summer, 5 in the fall, and 5 right now in the spring with practicum and those research assistantships. I also worked for a lawyer on the weekends and I was able to do it. I also volunteer for the board of directors. And I had 2 family emergencies actually, and the professors were so understanding, especially Mr. Karun saying all the time, if you're willing to advocate and work with the professors, this program also gives you that leg up and that safety net and that sense of community.
Thank you so much. I'll also just add with the graduate assistantships, it is an email that you'll get from the Office of Student Affairs. It's typically the first or second week of the fall term. As Dr. Napamanyashi said, it is 6 hours a week, $17 an hour. So it's not going to pay all of your bills, but it is a really nice supplement. And I'll also say the way ours is handled, you actually will get a paycheck. It's not just automatically applied to your student account, which is how it's handled in some other schools. So that's a benefit. And they're really diverse positions. They are anything from working, one-on-one with a faculty member on a special research project. We have a number of incredible centers at our school. Admissions were right next to the Center for Gambling Studies. A lot of research grants, center support that's needed there that research assistants assist with. We hire graduate assistants in the Office of Admission to do some enrollment research with us and also some things like this. So no matter what your talents are, you can probably find a position in there to apply for. And it's usually very simple. You'll submit a resume. The email will have each of the positions as well as how to apply. So definitely take a look out for that. What other questions do we have? See if there was anything else in the chat. Christina, go ahead and feel free to unmute.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me and offering, offering this program today. I'm really enjoying learning everything and connecting with you all. My question, and this maybe is for Paolo, but for anyone who can comment, I'm looking to be involved in international social work as well, and very much an interest in study abroad. And I was just wondering ways to build that into the curriculum. I think I only saw like 2 electives that would kind of fall under that designation. I didn't know other ways I could kind of integrate that into my studies during my time here. I'll be a full-time in-person student at Rutgers, New Brunswick for MSW.
I can start. So there are 2. I did global social work. I don't know if you saw, that's one of the classes. And within Rebecca Davis is actually the Global Initiative Social Advisor. So she hosts a lot of study abroad programs, specifically to Romania. And then Ms. Candelario, with the Lisa certificate, she actually made a class embedded with the spring break program to talk about community resilience in Puerto Rico. And it was a life-changing trip. I couldn't, it's not to sell it to you guys, I promise it's not, but it was just such a life-changing trip that re-inspired me for the social work that I want to do. So I would say there's faculty too. Miss Rebecca Davis, I told her that I was interested, and so that's when she put me to the United Nations and taking those 2 classes. And I know there's another class that she does, but you can also do a specialization for graduation. So if you take 3 classes and you try to say that you like to do international social work, that actually will also be added on to you.
Thank you.
Let's see. There was a question, I'm just looking for it now, from Vanessa in terms of, can you sort of define or talk a little bit more about what advocacy means, maybe as a student or as somebody who goes out and works in advocacy? What does that look like?
I can take a whirl at this. There is a course on community organizing, and there is a big movement now, spearheaded really by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation around power building and convening groups of people in communities, marginalized communities in which they work and plan for their own communities. In Puerto Rico, we visited several agencies where social workers actually convened community members, and they had boards of community members that were making decisions for their own communities. And so, again, those were spearheaded by social workers. So that's a form of advocacy, is helping to create an agenda for a community with obviously a community-driven agenda. So that's one form of advocacy, but there's also advocacy for communities, advocacy within organizations, outside of organizations. And when I talk about advocacy, I'm really describing a process of voicing solutions, right? They may be new solutions for communities and for populations. So, for instance, in my case, I provided testimony before the legislature around specific policies and regulations that existed in the state of New Jersey that were impacting our communities. That's a form of advocacy. But more and more you'll hear about this power building process and how communities are coming together with funding to make agendas, policy agendas for their own communities. And I'm sure my colleagues can add, and so can Paula.
Yeah, Paula, go ahead.
I think a lot of the advocacy work that I've done, especially in undergrad, was with Rutgers Future Scholars. So it's an agency that helps. It's actually connected to Rutgers and started in 2015 in New Brunswick, Piscataway, bringing in first-generation students to Rutgers. But I noticed that they weren't helping a lot of undocumented individuals or those that didn't have green cards or weren't able to. So one of the forms of advocacy is I brought this to the attention of the executive director, and we were able to do a workshop that actually gave resources to undocumented individuals. When I worked at Make the Road New Jersey, that really was more advocacy. So we did more organizing. I went to marches, I went to rallies. We talked to and did trauma-informed approaches with the youth. And when working with the youth, we also were raising their consciousness of their rights, political votes, and also the social services that are available to them and their parents. And after we did that, we would present these to senators. So they're actually also part of the Vote 16 campaign in New Jersey, and they were able to pass in New Jersey City. So there's a lot of ways to get involved, but also you have to take the initiative to bring these issues to directors.
I just wanted to add that, I'm thinking of the students that I've worked with. I'm looking at a list of field placements that we have, and so much of that work is about advocacy, right? So New Jersey Policy Perspectives, which is the big organization in New Jersey that does a lot of policy research. It's very connected, right? You have to understand what the issue is, and then you bring that to the legislators to say, this is what needs to happen. Then there's also, so there's research, there's communication, obviously, right? So many of the people that work in that space and another space have TikTok accounts where they actually try to get that stuff out into the public, right? Using social media to get the research out. That is also advocacy, right? We don't think about it that way, but it absolutely is, right? Connecting with the larger community about what is going on with, the SNAP program, what is going on with housing shortages and inaffordability. That is exactly what advocacy is. It's kind of formal where you go to the legislature, right, and talk to them, but there's also all of these other ways that advocacy needs to be happening.
Just going to add in the chat, I was on the Governor's Blue Ribbon panel on immigrant integration. It's a long, very, very long time ago, in 2007 or 8. And that's a form of advocacy as well. So coming together with other like-minded folks. In my area, I worked in the human services section of that report. And attended lots of hearings around the state to hear from the public on what they thought about immigration issues around New Jersey. I can say that out of that report, at that time, we were thinking about driver licenses for all people in New Jersey, regardless of status. We were talking about in-state tuition, which didn't exist at that time for all people, residents of New Jersey, irrespective of status. And we also talked about professional licenses, like the licensed clinical social worker or licensed social worker, and making that available for all people, regardless of status. So it was just a dream at that time, right, that those things would happen. And today, all 3 of those things are a reality in New Jersey. So that's a form of advocacy as well. It's collective action, right? Coming together with like-minded folks and working on an issue to make for a more just society. And that's really the role of a social worker.
Can I bring up kind of a very kind of close to home thing? I'm also one of the faculty advisors for the Payment for Placements group, which is a group of students who are advocating across the country, but we have a Rutgers chapter about getting paid for social work placements, right? We are one of the only professional schools, not us Rutgers, but social work, the only professions that does not get paid for our work. And so there's a big movement about that. And one of the first things that the students came to do, they got together, they advocated, they put together a report, they did research, and they asked our dean, with the help of faculty, kind of pushing through a little bit, but it was their work to reduce our practicum hours. That is why you have 900 hours this year. It used to be 1,250, I think, last year. So that is direct advocacy, right? Those students, they were all MAP students, and they got this to happen. So it just like, a quickie to show you what can be done with these skills.
Thank you so much. We have about 15, 16 minutes left. So we're happy to take any more questions that you have. I think let's make sure there's support for pay for placements in the in the chat box. Not surprisingly, right? Let's see. Any other questions for our hosts here?
Maroon, you didn't have a hand up, or did you? I thought I couldn't tell.
But I was going to ask, were we going to talk about the starting a nonprofit?
Absolutely.
On our agenda. So yeah, every year we get students who, to no surprise, they actually are very idealistic and want to start their own nonprofit. And so they're wondering what are some of the issues involved with that. And so Professor Candelario and I had done actually a New Jersey chapter event on this very issue, and I'll send you some resources in the chat. But basically, you have to think about why do you want to start it? What's the mission or purpose of it? You look at the neighborhood in which you're planning to start your nonprofit and see, well, has someone else done this already? So that's the first thing. Because otherwise, remember, if you go in and someone else has been doing it for some time, for example, providing direct services for children and adolescents in Newark, just to take an example. What you should do is actually look at the concentration of other nonprofits already doing that kind of work and see if you're going to start a nonprofit, what is it that you're going to contribute to? What are you going to add value for? Why should people go to you as opposed to those established agencies? Then secondly, you have to develop your own board. It is running a business basically. You need to get incorporated, get your what's called a 501c3 tax exempt status. And that's extremely important for raising donations. Without that, it hinders your ability to raise donations. Um, uh, it's difficult work. When you're a founder, you have to work evenings, weekends. Usually people are working at a job full time because, the bills have to get paid. You can't live a life on love and fresh air. So someone has to pay those bills, and usually it's going to be you. So you have to find like-minded people who are going to be developing this idea. Now, luckily, in our MAP courses, especially the management practice and theory and the program development and strategic planning, you really do learn how to develop these new organizations. Um, but as I said, it's not the easiest thing to do. You have to be very mission driven and have a passion. I've had a number of students actually who set up their own nonprofits as well as for profits. So, I mean, those skills are transferable. Um, so I'll leave you with that, and I'll upload the two resources we did from our chapter event.
Thank you for sharing that.
Can I jump in on one thing? There's a question in the chat about financial social work, and is there a certificate opportunity for that as well? So, Laura, unless I've completely been asleep for the last 3 years, there is no financial social work specialization. Certificate. But I do want to say one other thing that we haven't mentioned that is areas of emphasis, which there are things that you can kind of craft for yourself. It takes the field placement has to be related to that. So if it's something that you know already, you need to talk to the field placement person to tell them that you want this particular area. And then it involves taking 3 classes in that area. There is a page on our website that talks about this. I don't have it at hand, but I'll try to do that as soon as I stop talking. So for example, I was in charge of the social policy area of emphasis, and so students just had to get a field placement related to policy, which is kind of MAP anyway. And then 3 classes, and our required advanced contemporary policy class counted as one of those. And then they just had to find 2 other policy electives, either in our school or in other schools. So that's kind of the broad setup. If you're interested in something, you're welcome to connect with me and I can help you think that through. I'll find the website.
So while you're looking for that, Lena, so there are 3 courses you choose for your area of specialization. So if you're interested in something related to financial social work, the beauty of the area of emphasis is that you give it your own name as opposed to a certificate program. The certificate program is 4 courses and a full-year internship, and the area of emphasis is 3 courses that hang together conceptually and a full-year internship. So we already have a course in the MAP program called Financial Management. It's one of our electives. And then a second one is it's actually about financial social work, and it's taught by Professor Karen Zerlo. So already those are 2 courses you take, and then you throw in like a third course. It could be a policy course or maybe a program planning course at the end. You just need a third course, and you declare your area of emphasis. You email Dean Hunter. If you're taking a course outside of the School of Social Work, you're taking it as a general elective, you do need her permission. So you have to email her a description of the course, show that it's a 3-credit graduate level course with a description of the content. And, almost always she approves it. And so that's how you can build your area of emphasis. And I encourage you, if you don't enroll in a certificate program, which usually only about 25% of our students do, because it's kind of restricted in terms of the courses you have to take. Do an area of emphasis. If you're a MAP student, you're already going to be getting a certificate in human services management. So you might as well get an area of emphasis. And it appears on your transcript.
And I just put the link in the chat, and if you look there, there is actually a global social work area of emphasis, which I kind of forgot. So that's of interest to a couple of people here. So yeah, take a look at that, please, because it gives you lots of options.
We still have a few minutes left if anyone has any additional questions. I'll also invite any of our hosts to add any final words or information.
I just want to add that I put it in the chat too. I don't know if everyone's tuned into it, that the MAP specialization offers a mentoring initiative, which pairs, it is competitive, you have to apply, but it pairs a MAP student with a graduate, an alum, and they meet monthly for that one-on-one kind of development. I would call it professional development. And so the mentor offers guidance on networks that you might want to be a part of, professional networks, conferences that perhaps you'd like to attend. They make introductions to people in areas in which you might want to pursue. So we like to say they're not really an opening to a job, so that's not the reason for the mentoring, but rather guidance from a professional development perspective. We do a good job of academic development, but your mentor will provide that professional development. And that's a great opportunity for MAP students, along with the MAP chats that are facilitated out of our Center for Leadership and Management. And the MAP chats occur twice a semester, and they're really focused strictly on macro social work practice. And I think Dr. Singh is absolutely right. For those of you questioning clinical or MAP, they are two sides of the same coin. And I do like to say that, macro practitioners cannot do their work without micro practitioners, right? Like we hear about what's taking place on the ground. Like I could never manage an agency without knowing what's going on, right? In those one-on-one sessions between social workers and the public, or group sessions, right? I need information from them to design a really sound program, right? To conceptualize a really sound program, to advocate for what's missing in that arena. And likewise, they cannot, do their interventions if I don't raise funds for those programs. So we really are synchronous in our work. It's not this or that, but and, both and. And so I just want to add that.
Just want to say that I was in your shoes last year. It goes by so quickly, I promise. I wish all of you guys so much luck. There's so much work to do. Unfortunately, we have so much work to do, but I had a very close family with Rutgers Newark, and I feel like I was able to build that same passion and that same mentorship, not just from other professionals, but also from the staff and from the professors here at the program. So I hope you guys choose what you're passionate about, and I can't wait to see what you all do.
I just wanted to make a shameless plug. Actually, next Wednesday, if you're interested, remember, we have lots of events. In fact, we have an embarrassment of riches for MAP students. I have to tell you, there are events going on, coming out of your ears, literally. And as I said, we've had the MAP chats, which are run through the Center for Leadership and Management. And then Professor Candelario has run some, I think Dr. Nepomniachtchi has done some throughout the year. I run these New Jersey, New York City chapter events. I did one on Monday. I popped the PowerPoint into the chat already. But we're doing yet another one on coaching. So that's usually that's geared for people who are trying to figure out what they want to do and then to work on some area of specific interest. And so if you just want to learn about coaching, it's going to be on next Wednesday, 6 to 8 p.m. What I can do is I'll be sending the flyer out to all faculty and the registration information. I can send it to Dr. Dima Cantonio, and she can send it out to you. All right, so I hope some of you will register. It's free, and you get to meet graduating students, both clinical and MAP. It's open to all, as well as alumni who come. So that's also unofficial mentoring. You have questions for them, they're very excited. They love coming back. That's one way we can actually keep them together with us to keep coming back for all these various events.
Okay, well, I think we left an appropriate pause there, so I'm going to go ahead and